My guest today is full of adventure. In fact, her Instagram handle is Where We Went Next. I found her because I'm obsessed a little bit with van life, and they have a van that they rent out. They don't live in it full time, but they are adventurers for sure. Please welcome Haleigh Hendrickson. We're going to talk about she and her husband Cole and the adventures they're on. I am so excited to have you here because I've been following you on Instagram for quite a while, and I found you in Reels, and you captivated me in that, you know, what is it, 45 seconds or something, with sharing what you're up to in your life. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for asking me. This is so exciting. I'm kind of like in the transition period of life. And so it's nice for me to even get to kind of reflect and figure out, like, how did I get here?
Exactly. Well, that's what I want to know is, how did you get there? Let's start with you and your husband, how you met and your equal sense of adventure. I mean, I can't imagine each of you, having read about you and followed you, you not being with someone who's adventurous, either of you. So let's talk a bit about you and Cole and how you met, and let the audience get to know you that way.
Yeah, so our story is actually kind of crazy. I love telling our story. And I feel like it's important to note that I talk a lot about like pain points and pleasure points, and kind of like what propels you, you know, onto the path that you're on. And so both my husband and I grew up in Kentucky. He grew up in Washington. So it's even a miracle that we met. But we both decided to join the Peace Corps. And I go back to those pain points because I feel like at that time in our life, we were going through a hard time. And it was kind of one of those, for me, it was a very spur of the moment. Like, I need to get out of here. I need to figure out what I'm doing, where I want to be, who I want to be surrounded with. And I just kind of went for it. I will say I'm very good at trusting my gut. I usually don't think things through that far. The whole reason I even came upon the Peace Corps is because when I was in grad school, I was just walking down the hall of the university and saw a sign that was like, teach abroad. That led me to South Africa. It was actually my South African host family that was like, you should join the Peace Corps. So while I was in South Africa, I applied to the Peace Corps, came home and was like, Mom and Dad, I'm actually leaving to go to the Peace Corps. And so I just kind of went with it. And same with my husband. He was going through a hard time and just kind of needed that experience and wanted to kind of take the focus off of us and pour that into other people for a while, and like find ourselves through the process of service. And so
you and your husband hadn't met yet, right? You guys are each going through individual hard time, and that's what brought you to the Peace Corps. Okay.
Yeah. And so we actually met day one. We weren't even out of the United States yet. We were in LA for our like first training day. And he like sat down next to me, and the rest honestly is kind of history. Like, it is. It's funny from that moment. We both have this really fond memory of us just like laughing so hard. I mean, it's like you leave everything you know behind, you pack your entire life into a suitcase, boom, we show up in a conference room, we sit down next to each other, and we were just instantly best friends. But then as life goes, right, we get into the Philippines and we get our island assignments, and they're as far away across the country as they can possibly be. And, you know, if you know a little bit about the Peace Corps, it's like all of those common day luxuries are kind of gone. So like, we didn't have cell phone service to talk to each other regularly. We didn't have internet to FaceTime. We didn't, you know, we wrote a lot of letters. And
the old-fashioned way, kind of, right? I read that you had to, it was like a 12-hour bus ride, 2-hour plane ride, and then 2 more hour bus ride. So you had to really want to see each other, and just to even coordinate that would be complicated, not like just shooting a text, hey, meet in 2 hours or whatever it would be.
Yeah, well, and we had to get it approved. So we even, you know, it's like we didn't get to see each other as often as we wanted. You basically earn like 2 vacation days every month. And so we would wait 3 months and then take a week trip together, and then wait 3 months. But that's kind of how our like adventurous love story began, because it wasn't the traditional, you know, come over, watch a movie, or like go to dinner.
No swiping right or anything like that. None of that.
Yeah, it was, we would get an idea in our head and be like, want to go to this island, you know, and we would just meet up on a new island, not knowing, you know, how we were going to get around or what it was going to be like, right? Because we weren't researching the places. I mean, we really were just showing up. And so we have, you can only imagine, hilarious travel stories and mishaps and, you know, things that we got to share together very early in a relationship that most, you know, couples maybe wouldn't be comfortable doing, you know, but it was incredible.
Some of the places that you went, tell us some of the places I read about, but just give us an idea.
Yeah. Okay. So our like first real trip together, our first like real date, that's kind of what we call it. We went to this little island called Gigantes in the Philippines. And we get there and where this like resort-esque place we thought we were staying was literally just a bamboo hut. It didn't have a floor, no electricity, no water. We were actually the only people on the on that island. And so for the next like 6 days, we are like Nanai, the lady who was taking care of the place we were staying, would go and catch like crabs and stuff and just cook them there for us, and took us around in her little banca, like her little boat. And we just explored the island. So we took a bunch of trips like that, but then we also went to Taiwan together for our first Christmas together. And we took a trip to Bali. This is all while we were in service. And then we also took a trip to Hawaii to see his family midway through service. And that's kind of how we ended up here. And then post Peace Corps, when we finally, you know, got to be together, we took a 2-month backpacking trip through Southeast Asia and pretty much just started in Malaysia and Borneo and worked our way all the way up to mainland Asia and around.
And the rest is history, right?
The rest is history.
So we can say that you're in Hawaii. That's your home base.
Yes.
And how long have you lived there now?
4 years, going on 4 years.
4 years. And so even though you're in one spot now and you're in a beautiful spot, you spend much of your day doing something outdoors. Your Instagram says, and your blog says, buy the plane ticket, go on the hike, say yes to adventure. So you do that in your daily life. It's just part of who you both are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we, that was actually like my vision board of, you know, where I wanted to end up, was to not have to watch the sunrise from the freeway. That was kind of my like goal in life. And so even now, like on a Wednesday, we'll sneak in a sunrise hike. And that's the beauty of living somewhere like Hawaii, is you can, you know, beauty is literally right outside your door all the time.
I feel the same way about, we were talking before the show, we started recording about where we live. Your husband's from Washington. Cole is from Washington State, from Bellevue. And then we're in the middle of the state here in Wenatchee. And it kind of is a really nice, best kept secret. It's less and less of a secret these days, but there are places, and I have been on, you know, sunrise hikes, and you can see the whole city from certain parts of the town where we live, and the water and all of the adventure. What do you look for in a place when you travel? Or is it partly just show up somewhere and figure out what you'll discover as you go?
No, so I'm a planner.
Yeah.
I have like every lonely, you can actually see a bunch of my Lonely Planet travel books back there. I am someone who, I don't want to miss anything. I don't normally repeat places. So I want to see everything, and I will not sleep on a vacation to make it happen. I mean, I don't think I've ever in all my years of traveling missed a sunrise on a vacation. So I want to wake up and see the day. And so that, for us, that's how we plan. We usually get like an activity in our mind. So we'll take diving trips, or we'll take, you know, skiing trips, or, you know, surfing trips, and that we kind of plan our trip around that. Which is why in Utah, our most recent one, I don't know if you saw, but I posted, like, just logged our 100th mile in Utah, because that for us was a hiking trip. So we were just hiking all the time. We never eat at restaurants. We never really stay in hotels. We literally.
So you use your van for that travel. So, and not when you're traveling in the States, what do you travel in?
We rent either a van or a car, and we sleep in a tent.
Yeah, because your van is in Hawaii that you rent out.
Yeah.
And so you use that mode of transportation when you're here, when you're in the United States, well, obviously you're in the United States, but when you're here, when you're traveling around these states or when you're visiting family, you're still living van life or something like it.
Yes, we're always trying to save money where we can so that we can take more trips. So for us, like eating out just isn't a priority. Neither of us are foodies. We'll go to the grocery like the moment we land somewhere, buy a bunch of bread and peanut butter and granola bars and oatmeal. We'll pack our stove, and we just kind of like live in that mindset of being on the road, even when we're traveling, so that we can prioritize activities over, luxury stays and stuff
For
like that.
sure. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to hear about the big changes that you both made so that you could see the sunrises from somewhere other than a freeway. You gave up a teaching career and made a decision about that some time ago. I want to hear about that. And we're going to just catch up on all the things that are so interesting about your entire story. I'm so excited you're here. We're talking with Haleigh, and we're talking about the adventures she and her husband Cole take. If you want to follow along with her on Instagram, it is _where we went next. We'll be back in just a moment. We are talking with Haleigh Hendrickson. We're talking about she and her husband Cole. They are on adventures. They were adventures. I discovered them on Instagram _where we went next. She's filling us in on the details. So you and your husband met during the Peace Corps. You were miles and miles and miles and miles away from each other, came together when you were all done, and now you live in Hawaii. You travel when you're here, you use a van or some form of transportation to keep things simple. Never missed a sunrise anywhere that you've traveled, any day that you're on vacation. No. Now, does Cole, if you call it a vacation, does Cole share that in common with you? Is he up watching the sunrise as well?
Yes, he is. That's actually talking about like going back to our first story. We only got to stay 2 weeks together in the Peace Corps right before they split us up on our islands. And that's kind of how we snuck our time in between trainings, is we would wake up before everyone else and we would roam, around and hang out together before the sun was up. And we just
it wouldn't quite work if you're like up and he's still snoring, not taking it in with you. That's a fact in just anybody's life, right? You want somebody who shares the things that are important to you. So let's talk about you deciding to leave your job. You were a teacher for how long, and what did you teach?
I was a teacher for 8 years, and I taught English, most recently 6th grade English.
And how did you come to that decision? What was it that what was it that you wanted to change, that you wanted to have experience in your life that teaching couldn't give you, or was getting in the way of the way you wanted to live?
Oh gosh, where to even begin? I'll admit from the very beginning, I knew teaching it didn't feel right. Even in grad school, like when I went to grad school to get my master's in education, even sitting in that setting, I was like, it just didn't feel right. And I think I just kept thinking that if I did it in a different setting, so when I first got out, I thought I wanted to work in urban education. And so I moved to Chicago and I worked on the south side of Chicago teaching there. And that just like didn't quite fit. And so then I went and taught in South Africa in more of like a private school setting. That didn't quite fit. Then I ended up in the Philippines, right? Teaching in very rural barangays. And it's like, that didn't quite fit. And so I kept changing up my scene, changing up my age group even. I've taught everything from senior to 5th grade, actually. And it wasn't quite right. And I finally just had to, I think, give myself permission to think, it's okay I turned 30 this year. And I think that's why it was such like what am I doing? I need to kind of figure this out. And I don't think it was just one thing. It was just, I wasn't happy. And I think that's just what it comes down to. I was very good at it. I was good at teaching. And I think that's why I stayed in it as long as I did. I think I got a lot of outside pressure of, we need teachers like you. And, the kids really need you. And almost like this guilt that we put on teachers to remain in the teaching profession, regardless of how it makes them feel, but because of their duty to do this thing for other people. And, I finally.
And the extensive education, right? At some point you're accepting of the fact that that's where you invested your time, energy, money, all of those things. But at some point if it's not a fit for you, then you got to cut your losses. at some point and be accepting of that. So it took you a while to get there.
It did. And I will say I had a whole plan in process. Like I knew what I was doing. I knew I had to, the reality was that I had to make money. And I wasn't ever going to be able to make enough money in one other job because I didn't have the amount of time to create enough income in one spot because I was working 12 hours a day at school, and including my 2.5-hour commute, which that's a whole nother story. But so I started diversifying my income, and that's ultimately how I was able to remove myself from something that wasn't making me happy.
And when you say diversifying your income, so you are a fitness and wellness coach, and that obviously is that fits for you. But in addition to fitness and wellness, your spectrum is helping women live that life, whatever that life looks like for them, whether they are a teacher and they're thriving and that's part of what they're doing. What else about your life can you make even better to live that full life and include some adventure, to go on the hike and buy the plane ticket? And I think that's COVID, like you had said, boy, you went through some, when we were talking before the show, it kind of made you see where you want to be and where you want to visit and how you want to live your life. I think a lot of us have gone through that. It's brought a lot into perspective. So let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk more specifically about your coaching business and how you use it to serve others, but also from the point of view of adventure, right? Not everyone would be a great fit if they're okay with not watching the sunrise sometimes, right?
Right.
Okay, let's take a quick break. We are talking with Haleigh Hendrickson. Again, it's _where we went next. You can follow their adventures there. And you are a very talented archivist. Archivist? That is a word. Your archives that you share through Instagram are absolutely beautiful. You have a talent that not everyone on there has. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Haleigh. We're talking with Haleigh Hendrickson. If you want to follow her on Instagram, she and her husband Cole, it's _where we went next. You were sharing how you left your teaching job and are now a fitness and wellness coach, focusing a lot on adventure and living your best life, right?
Yes.
What about becoming a coach? You're a planner, you mentioned. So what did you have in mind for it when you set out to become a coach? What were you looking to do and how were you looking to improve the lives specifically of women?
So, coaching, and I tell people this all the time, I truly think that what we do is for everyone, because when I knew I wanted to change my life, right? And I talk a lot about trying to help women get unstuck. I was very stuck. And I think that what happens when we get in those seasons of our lives is we're already so exhausted, right? We're already so tired. We're already so overworked that even the thought of like adding something to our plate is just insane. We can't even fathom the idea. And so we stay stuck. And so I always try and tell people that sometimes you have to put in more work to get the work freedom that you're looking for. And that's kind of what I had to do. And I was talking to you earlier about diversifying income. I was so overwhelmed in my job. I would come home and cry like literally every single day. But I knew that my only way out of that was to keep adding jobs. And I know that sounds insane. And I know there's a lot of people that disagree with that because I did go through a very hard season. And every day I'd get home and I'd be like, why am I doing this? Why? Because I also coach softball. So I was coaching softball after school and I was running my wellness business before school. And we're also renting out the van, right? And it was like I was adding all of these things, but I had a plan. And that's what I keep going back to is you have to have a plan. You can't just say, well, I don't want to, I'm not happy in my job, because you're never going to get out of your job unless you make a plan. And so I knew I had a plan, and I knew that for a year or two, things were going to really be hard. Things were going to be hard.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of time, I didn't have time to go out and do.
Well, I think what you're saying about adding stuff on, I mean, you were calculated about it. I always say that my goal in my career, I was once asked during an interview, and I've just carried it through for the last 17 years now, is that I wanted to figure out how to feed my kid and feed my soul and be home by 3 o'clock every day when he got home from school. And I had to add enough in that I wasn't overwhelmed and I could be the mother that I wanted to be. And then I had to make sure that I could then also have enough to add in that I built up when it was time for him to go to college. And I, needed to up that income or whatever, however that was going to look for me, my financial plan. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that, and being calculating about it, being, you know, you might have to do some things you don't love, or you try to add on the things that you know you can see aren't going to be perfect yet, but will build upon as time goes forward. And so how close do you feel from what you projected for yourself or planned, not necessarily financially, but somewhat, from what you had in mind for your life to where you are now? Do you feel like the things you've added are making sense, and the things that can fall away are things you can let go of now?
Yes, I'm not there yet, but for the first time in my life, I can like confidently say I'm on the path. And you made a good point. You're talking about wanting to be home with your son, and that's why I knew I had to make the change now, because we don't have kids yet. And so I had to, you know, we do have push seasons in life and we have rest seasons. And for me, this was a push season, because if I wanted to get to the life that I foresee for my family, my future family, I had to push now, even if that meant that I had a lot of nights where I cried and I was overwhelmed and I'm like, why am I working so many jobs? Because now I do get to I still have a bunch of jobs. I still coach softball. I still have a health and wellness business. I still write on my blog. I still rent out my van. And now I work with brands, but those are all things I love.
Right.
So now I'm overwhelmed, but I'm passionate about the things that are overwhelming me. And I got to stop doing the one that was overwhelming me, but wasn't fueling my soul. And so it's like, I'm not there yet,
Yeah.
but I'm financially stable enough in the 5 things that I am doing to get myself there.
Yeah.
So that one day I'm like, this is it. I made it.
You make a point. You make a really good point too, because I just recently let go of one of, I call them buckets of passion, things I love to do and figure out how to get paid for. And they had one lingering thing that I'd been doing for a long time that was hard to give up, because my one rule is, first rule is it has to be something I can do from anywhere. And it usually includes words or storytelling of some form, but I finally gave that up because I wasn't growing from it. I was editing, I was not learning, I was helping other people learn, which was great, and it served its purpose, but that was the last thing. So that's the last thing that I do for a living that I don't love. And I feel like I had just turned 50 last week, and I feel like, well, and good for you that it didn't take you till you're 50, but I've been doing a lot of things I love for a long time. And that was just one little piece of the pie, you know, that didn't quite fit. And so it served its purpose, and I feel free of it. And I can relate to all the things that you're saying just 20 years later, you know?
Yes,
Sure.
that's the goal, right? To be able to do what you love from anywhere. And
Yeah.
that's where I'm hoping to eventually get.
And figure out how to get paid for it and not hate it after that, right?
Yeah.
You know, make sure it really is about the passion that you're exploring. Well, I appreciate you being here. I want people to know too how they can reach you. So underscore where we went next. You can also check out the van rental if you're going to be in Hawaii, which I think would be a really great way to go, because you do save a ton of money and you get to have more adventures. And I've traveled with a trailer where I cook on the back, and I thought it was great fun. It makes things simpler for sure.
It is the way to see the island. And that's why we created it, right? We wanted people to see the island the way that we get to see it, and we get to experience it. And so born was the adventure van.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story. I'll be following along from here on out. So I hope you get all of your buckets of passion, and that they provide all of the things that you're looking for, fulfill the needs. So thanks for being here, Haleigh.